The final weekend of the NBA regular season is upon us. How will the Memphis Grizzlies handle it? Your guess is as good as ours, but Coach Cole and Coach Mullinax, we got you covered. We're going to tell you how we would handle this final regular season weekend if we were running the Memphis Grizzlies, plus who we want to see come out of the play-in tournament and who we don't want to see in a 2-7 matchup. Next, here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another installment of Locked On Grizzlies, a Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is Friday. It feels so good. I'm here once again with my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole. The sun is shining, hopefully, where you are. And even if it's not literally shining, at least it is figuratively shining because you've got myself and Damichael talking Memphis Grizzlies with you to head off and start off the final weekend of this NBA regular season. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network here at Locked On Grizzlies, your team each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can find us over on YouTube as well. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all those fun things. Continue to make Damichael and I here at Locked On Grizzlies part of your NBA playoff experience. It's almost here, Damichael. It's like Christmas Eve for NBA basketball fans. One more weekend to get through. It's a holiday weekend. Happy Easter to everybody who celebrates. And obviously, coming out of the holiday, it is the play-in tournament and then the playoffs, which the Memphis Grizzlies will once again be a part of. Damichael Cole, it's so good to see you. Commercial appeal beat writer covering the Memphis Grizzlies. We're almost there. We're on the precipice.
Almost there.
The next time that we are together on Monday's episode, we're going to have a play-in tournament to discuss.
We're going to have some answers. This NBA season, not even the full season I hope, but the last couple weeks, doesn't it feel like a complicated chemistry equation? Look, the hardest class I ever took, shout out to all the engineers out there, but physics. I took physics in high school, and I'll never forget, Joe. In physics class, it was the first time in my life. It filled up my entire front sheet of my paper.
Yep. And
we got to the end to get the answer. From the top of the paper all the way down to the bottom. You know, you can usually write a whole 3.5 essay on a sheet of paper. It took us that long to answer one of three questions on the physics. And that's when I knew this isn't for me. But how does that relate to the Grizzlies? Well, every day something is changing and you just don't know what's going to happen. That's me in physics. I didn't know what I was doing. Thank goodness I made it out of that class. Shout out to Dr. Dubose, wherever you are out there.
Dr. Dubose, what?
But man, it's one day it's the Clippers are at 5. The next day, it's the Warriors at 5. And then it's the Lakers at 6, Lakers at 8, the Timberwolves at 7, 8. It's every single game. And I think I said this on yesterday's episode too. Every single game is so important. And it's just so fun. I mean, the play-in was a grand slam. Joe. We complain a lot about this new CBA stuff that they're coming up with and all this in-season tournament, which I think is horrible. But all that's beside the point. Joe, I'm super excited to see, when we get back on Monday, we'll finally have some answers, get some answers to this physics equations that is the NBA season.
And we'll have an answer to the question that we're about to ask one another here momentarily, because everything that you just outlined is absolutely true, Damichael. Who has any idea who is going to actually be in this play-in tournament, right? Especially in the Western Conference. In the East, it's set, right? You've got Toronto, Chicago, I think it's Miami and Atlanta. Those are the 4 teams that are in the play-in. They're locked. In the West, it could be any 5 or 6 teams, right? It's still very wide open in the Western Conference heading into the Friday night slate of games, including the Memphis Grizzlies, who you and I cover. So obviously Memphis is not going to fall below 3. It's very likely they're going to be the 2 seed. But they play the Milwaukee Bucks, and then they play the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday, a game that could be very meaningful to the Thunder, could mean nothing at all to the Memphis Grizzlies. But because of the play-in tournament now, Damichael, Memphis essentially has a bye week, right? The play-in tournament starts, I think, either Monday or Tuesday.
April 11th through the 14th. So you got a nice little window there where you can practice.
You're going to have, I'm guessing they'll even give the guys a couple of days off and then maybe have 3 practices in a row. Yeah, no days off for us, unfortunately, Damichael. It's playoff time here at Locked On Grizzlies. But for them, days off. And then that, thankfully we have somebody that's on the Grizzlies beat that can maybe go to some practices, give us some content to discuss. But I think that the general question I have for you, and you can ask it back to me after, how would Coach Cole, Coach Jenkins is not there this weekend. He has other things to do. Coach Cole has taken over the Memphis Grizzlies for the weekend. How would you approach the Grizzlies being up 2 games in the Western Conference with 2 games to go? They play the Bucks tonight. They play the Thunder on Sunday. You have essentially 5 days off after that. Do you sit everybody and avoid injury? Do you continue to play and try to find a groove? There's no more back-to-backs. That's officially done for the Grizzlies, right? So do you just keep playing? Do you limit their minutes? How would you approach these last couple of games? Because what your opponent does is irrelevant. Milwaukee has clinched the number 1 seed in the NBA overall. They may play nobody. You go into Oklahoma City on Sunday afternoon, and it could be the entire season on the line for the Thunder. So how do you approach these last 2 games if you are Coach Cole, head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies?
Well, let's say this first. I'm Coach Cole, head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, but at the same time, I'm a disciple from the Taylor Jenkins tree, right? Just like he came from the Popovich and the Budenholzer backgrounds. I've come from the Taylor Jenkins background. So I got to insert some of his principles when I answer this, Joe. And some of the principles are as simple as this. I love pairings. I love rotational. You can't just throw guys out there and say, hey, we're going to give them some minutes. It's got to make sense. So since it's got to make sense, I'm gonna use the same starters. I'm gonna use the same, bench guys. But first half, pretty regular rotation minutes, and then the second half you kind of phase out. Try to keep Ja maybe 20 minutes or so, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and all those guys in that range. But you want to match up the parents. You want to start that second quarter with Desmond Bane playing alongside Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, and those group, and Jaren Jackson Jr. And you want to, get John Morant onto the floor with Dylan Brooks and the group that they play with. But that's a big part of it. I think you got to get these parents right. And then when you get to the second half, you want to see David Roddy. You still want to see guys, a lot of the guys who could potentially impact the roster. Of course, in the fourth quarter, let Kenneth Lofton Jr., let Vince Williams, let Kenny Chandler get some run there. But if we're being honest here, from my perspective of this show, Kenneth Lofton Jr., as fun as he is to watch, he's on a 2-way contract. Vince Williams, he's on a 2-way contract. Even if you wanted to, you can't use those guys in the postseason. They've both spent a lot of time getting development with the hustle. So development is important, but we've got enough development for the season. This is all about the playoffs right now. Yeah, let those guys get some run in the fourth. But right now, we're going to let Xavier Tillman get some extended run in that third quarter as he goes back to the bench. He has to get more, used to playing with those guys coming off the bench, right? He's been playing with the starting lineup. And then when Steven Adams gets back, he goes to the bench. So there's the adjustment there. But if it's the simple answer for me is you play the starters, but you play them in small dosages. You want to avoid the rust. The job talked about rust a little bit last season. You saw early in that series against the Timberwolves kind of came out, really punching the Grizzlies. So with that being said, you want to get these guys some time on the floor.
I'm glad you said the rust, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up. The fact that the Timberwolves, who were in the play-in, right? That's how the Timberwolves
they came in hot.
Right. They're going to keep playing, whereas the Grizzlies will not be. So I think because of that, they need to play both of these games. They need to treat it like a preseason game, play the whole first half normally. I'm with you on that. Start the third quarter that way, and then you reevaluate. If Coach Mullinax was at the helm, we would reevaluate after that third quarter and say, okay, this game doesn't matter. We can let Kenny Lofton Jr. and Vince Williams, because to your point, those guys are not going to be with the team as of Sunday night, Monday afternoon, they're no longer active. Two-way contracts can't dress and play in the postseason. So I would still let them get run in both of these fourth quarters coming up. I don't want my guys to get rusty. And if for whatever reason, especially the Bucks game, if Memphis is only up 5 going into the fourth quarter, maybe you just play it like a normal game.
Because you need those fourth quarter reps too, right?
Correct. Right. And it also, again, matchups are important here. If Milwaukee decides to sit everybody, then it doesn't make as much sense for Ja to go up against a third-string point guard. But if Drew Holiday's out there, if Giannis is out there, those are meaningful reps to try to stay sharp. You can't say on one hand that you want to go into the playoffs playing your best basketball and then not have your best players play basketball for an entire week. It doesn't add up. It doesn't compute, to go back to your physics example earlier. So for me, I would most certainly play them in both games. I don't think it makes sense. The way that the play-in tournament is now, they're about to have the longest stretch off that they've had since the All-Star break. They might as well play it out as long as health is not a concern. If somebody has something that's a legitimate, Santi Aldama, great example, right? His status up in the air. Whatever the injury case might be, that's different. If they can play, they should play. And then once you're in game, you check out how the minutes go. So that's how Coach Cole and Coach Mullinax would handle the coming weekend. How would you handle it? Let us know in the comments. Hit us up there how you would load manage the coming weekend. Coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to talk about the crazy play-in standings as of this Friday. We're going to take a look at who we want to see, who we don't want to see. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, it is time for the Nissan Aria Player of the Week. And this isn't going to surprise any of you, but the most electric player of the week for us here at Locked On Grizzlies, brought to you by Nissan, is Jaren Jackson Jr. And it's brought to you by the all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria. Jaren Jackson Jr., 40-piece against the New Orleans Pelicans, certainly wasn't the reason the Grizzlies lost. 5 stocks on top of that 40-point performance. One of the best two-way players in the NBA right now is Jaren Jackson Jr., a really fierce defender of the rim, really impressive, elegant finishes at the bucket. He delivers on the concept of duality, both on the offensive and defensive ends of the floor, and so does the Nissan Aria, the perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Nissan Aria packs pin-to-your-seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria is the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. We're talking teams we want to see come out of the play-in tournament next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies on this beautiful Friday. It is I, Joe Mullinax of Bluff City Media, joined by Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal. If you're not subscribed to the Commercial Appeal, and if you're not subscribed to Bluff City Media, you got to get it together. Go to bluffcitymedia.co, go to the Commercial Appeal online, subscribe. You're not going to be fully prepared for the NBA playoffs without both of those subscriptions. Just want to put that out there right now. So get on top of that. Check out Damichael's work over at the CA, my work, and everybody else's work at Bluff City Media. There's like 50 of us now over at bluffcitymedia.co/join. All sorts of fun things as the playoffs approach. The play-in standings are kind of crazy, Damichael, right? Going into this last weekend of the season, there are 5 teams that realistically the Grizzlies could see in a 2-7 matchup. And again, the standings change night to night, but Oklahoma City, Dallas, they're kind of fighting it out for the 10 seed now. Unlikely that either of those teams gets out of the play-in because they have to win twice, right? Yeah. And they have to win both games on the road. So it's possible, but unlikely. Plus, those are also the 2 teams that, again, roughly are multiple games under 500. Theoretically, the worst teams that we're talking about here. So we're going to focus on 5 teams that are all within 2 games of each other with 2 games to go. So again, theoretically speaking, any of them could be in the play-in as of this recording. The LA Clippers, which seems unlikely, they'll probably be the 5, but we're going to include them for the purpose of math. Golden State Warriors, similar concept. The Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Timberwolves. So of those 5 teams, Damichael, which one, if you had your druthers, if you had your choice, which one would you want to see land in that magic number 7 spot, assuming the Grizzlies get the 2 seed? It's like an 85% chance at this point, I believe, in terms of probability. Memphis would have to lose both games, and the Kings would have to win both games in order for Sacramento to get that 2 seed, which is unlikely. For probability-wise, it's improbable. So let's say Memphis is the 2. Who do you want to see win that first game of the play-in tournament and head to Memphis for a first-round series coming up here next week?
I'm going to say the Pelicans, because I don't want – I'm going to go ahead and air this out before someone out there may recognize it. Early on in the season when we were doing Locked On Grizzlies, I said the Pelicans were one of a couple teams that I felt would be a very tough matchup for the Grizzlies. And that was with a healthy Zion Williamson, particularly because – if you watch how the Grizzlies guard, we talked about this, how they guard Herb Jones. I don't think that is something you can do with Jaren Jackson when you have Zion and Brandon Ingram in the lineup. It's worked primarily when you have only one of those guys in the lineup because you're going to need Zion. You're going to need a bigger body on Zion if Dillon is going to be guarding Brandon Ingram. So Dillon can't guard Zion and Brandon Ingram like we've seen. When one or the other is out, he guards the other guy, and Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of roams the paint. So with all that being said, Zion's injury status is very up in the air. And I think of the teams that we're talking about here, the Timberwolves are another one that I think would be a welcome matchup because the Timberwolves haven't had a lot of time for this new group to gel together. But I'm going to focus on the Pelicans in particular because the 2 times that the Pelicans have beat the Grizzlies, they've had very out of body experiences from the 3-point line. I think now, even after that one game where Herb Jones makes 5 3-pointers, the Grizzlies are going to continue to live with that. And we've seen how the Grizzlies, when Jaren Jackson Jr. is roaming around the paint, they have the ability to limit the Pelicans in the paint. And then there's the other side of it, right? Jaren Jackson Jr., he is the ultimate mismatch against that team. Larry Nance Jr., too short, shoots over him all the time. Jonas Valanciunas, too slow, forces fouls on him just because he can just drive the ball past him. He is a mismatch anytime you play the Pelicans without Zion Williamson in the lineup. And I think the Grizzlies just have the ability to take advantage of those things. We haven't even discussed, the Ja Morant angle of what he brings to the table. Luke Kennard's 3-point shooting I think the Grizzlies shot 10 of 30 from 3-point range in that last game. How about adding Luke Kennard's 3-point shooting ability to kind of go, even if the Pelicans do have a good shooting night, you can kind of have him to offset some of that. So I think the Pelicans are the team where if the Grizzlies were to play them, you're talking 5, maybe 6 games.
I would agree. I think that the Pelicans.
Oh boy, did we just agree again?
Yeah, I'm gonna give another team just in a moment, but I think that if you watch that game on Wednesday night and you were scared of the New Orleans Pelicans, I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's nothing to fear. The Zion thing is key. I agree with that.
That's something to fear.
Really changes the defensive aspects of what Memphis is capable of. But if we're assuming Zion isn't there, then I think it's fair if there's a Pelican. And we had some Pelicans folks check out the Thursday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It's fair to assume that Steven Adams won't be there, right? Just, tit for tat kind of injury comparison. And if we're doing that, I think that the Grizzlies are able to overcome the Adams absence in a first round series. If it comes to that, again, injury reports, all that sort of stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. If Adams is there, it's a different story. If he's not, of the teams that we've listed, I am least nervous about the Pelicans taking advantage, if that makes sense. I'm least nervous of the Pelicans taking advantage of Steven Adams being out for all the reasons that you just outlined. Another team that I would not be as concerned about if Memphis saw them among the 5 that we've listed is, this is going to surprise you, the Golden State Warriors. Not that I'm not concerned.
All
right. Not that I'm not concerned that the Grizzlies could get beat. Obviously, the Warriors have beat them before. They could beat them again. That's not my point. I would not be worried about Memphis entering a game 1 tired. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like the thing that happened with Minnesota starting fast, the surprising game 1 win for the Timberwolves, that's not happening if it's the Warriors. The Grizzlies will be ready if it is a 2-7 Memphis Golden State. Could the Warriors win in 6 or 7 games? Yeah, they could. I'm not disputing that. The Warriors are a good basketball team. I think we can all agree that of the 5 options, the Pelicans are probably the worst. Maybe you could make an argument for the Timberwolves, but with Cat back, that's hard for me to do. They're just healthier at this stage. The Timberwolves are.
No Naz Reid.
That's true. Naz Reid being out, that's a fair point. So the Timberwolves and the Pelicans are that bottom tier. The Warriors are probably in the middle. And then the Clippers and the Lakers are probably the two teams that I have a feeling we're going to talk about here momentarily. But in terms of the Warriors, they're kind of the final boss for these Grizzlies. I just see that as destiny. Like at some point for Memphis to get to the NBA Finals, they're going to have to beat the Golden State Warriors in a 7-game series.
Yeah, why not? Michael Jordan, Detroit Pistons. Why not?
That's exactly right. That's exactly where I was going. Nailed it, partner, per usual. They're going to have that moment. And you might as well get it out of the way in the first round. And imagine the confidence. If the Grizzlies are able to knock off Golden State in 6 games in Golden State, or even if it's a game 7 in Memphis, it will be 2013 knocking off the Clippers vibes. And the confidence will skyrocket, and it will become a positive rolling snowball downhill. So I kind of want to see the Warriors. And again, for all the Golden State people that are going to come in here and comment about, he wants the Warriors. Okay. I'm not knocking your team. It is not I think the Grizzlies can beat them, but Golden State can just as easily beat Memphis. My point is Memphis will be ready. There will be no lull. There will be no layoff. They'll be chomping at the bit to get after the Warriors in a game 1 in Memphis next weekend. And that is where my focus would be, if that makes sense. So those are teams that we want to see. We want to see the Pelicans. We want to see the Warriors, or at least I want to see the Warriors.
Yeah, you want to see the Warriors.
Maybe Damichael this year. Okay, so we both want to see the Pelicans. Who are some teams we don't want to see? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, as we've been talking about throughout this episode. The Memphis Grizzlies will be there. Chances are you'll be watching as well. Now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers, 3-point strain, to everything in between. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Teams that we hope Memphis can avoid in a 2-7 matchup. Next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your co-host, Joe Mullinax, joined by my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. I am a Grizzlies columnist for Bluff City Media, and Damichael is the beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies for the Commercial Appeal. Make sure you're checking him out at Damichael C. Check out my work over at Joe Mullinax. Again, Locked On Grizzlies, Commercial Appeal, Bluff City Media. We've got you covered. We've got you ready for the NBA playoffs. Make sure you stick with us. We talked about teams that we wanted to see, and I want to make sure I clarify, all right? I agree with you on the Pelicans. That would be my #1. For the sake of being different, I gave you my #2, who was Golden State, for reasons that you probably disagree with. So let's flip the script now. We're not scared of anybody, right? You always have to give that masculine, I don't fear nothing.
Right. You're fine in the West, huh?
I'm gonna flex on the camera here in a minute.
You ain't ducking no smoke. You run up the chimney, right?
Right. I wonder if we'll hear any of that this year. Probably not. No. But I digress.
The good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. That's vintage at this point. But anyway, I digress. A team that you don't want to see, Damichael. Maybe you don't want to see the Warriors. We've talked about this before with a possible Golden State matchup. So maybe we'll rehash that conversation. Or maybe because remember, I included the Clippers in this conversation as well.
Yeah.
And if you watch the Clippers decimate the Los Angeles Lakers on Wednesday night like I did, the Clippers, again, it's unlikely the Clippers are in this spot. I want to preface it with that. But since we included them in the conversation, maybe the Clippers would be your #1 here.
Yeah, so let me preface with one more thing I want to say.
Sure.
As tough as all those teams are, here's my hot take. I think the Grizzlies could beat every one of them in a series.
Oh, sure.
Every single seed. And not only do I think they could beat them, I would project them to win a series against each of these teams. Now that we have that out the way, the teams that I think that you don't want to play the most, one would be the Clippers. But there's the chance you could get the Clippers for a couple games without Paul George and all that, and that'll matter. But as we've seen, the Clippers are so deep. How much does it matter when Bones Highland can just come off the bench and just light up guys, and Norm Powell can come off the bench and score 27 in a game? Eric Gordon, I mean, they got weapons, right? So that's one team. But number one for me, I mean, Joe, we don't have to overthink this thing. It's Golden State. Now, and I just said what I wanted to say as part of this. This is the year, and I've said this pretty consistently for the most part of the year. This is the one year where last year, I think I picked Golden State to win that series in 6 or 7. This year, this is the first time I feel like the Grizzlies can win that series. But it won't be easy by any stretch of the imagination, because in order for the Grizzlies to win that series, I feel like history will have to happen. Not history in just the fact that the Grizzlies will be the first team to beat, Golden State in the Western Conference playoffs since 2014. Not just that history, but Golden State. I don't know the number off the top of my head, Joe, but they've won a game. They've basically taken a game in a series on the road. I forgot the exact numbers, but I'm sure you've heard of the number. It's a crazy amount of consecutive series where Golden State has won at least one road game. It's almost a given at this point. It's happened for 6-7+ years. So if they win one game in Memphis, I think it's toast. I don't see them losing at Chase Center right now. I mean, that team they are Golden State 73-9 almost good when they get in Chase Center. But on the road, they're very, very, very bad. They are Golden State.
They're the 2012 Charlotte Bobcats.
Oh, yeah. That's how bad they are on the road. Mm-hmm. So those varying levels there. But they've played better on the road as of late. And, of course, there's kind of this thought now that they have Gary Payton II and Andrew Wiggins will be back in the postseason, that those two guys can kind of flip some of the tide in the postseason. So Golden State is at the top of the list for me. I still think the Grizzlies could win that series, but you have no room for error. You lose one game at home, I think it's over.
Grizzlies in 7 would be my pick. I agree with you that it would be a hellacious series, but like I said, they're the Grizzlies' final boss. To get to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, obviously, it's a great narrative. Yeah,
Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, dark horse Cleveland. One of those teams will be there waiting for them. But just to get to that big dance, the Grizzlies are going to have to go through Golden State at some point. But I agree with you; it would be a hellacious series. Yeah. I struggle with seeing the Warriors flip that switch, and I think we've talked about that before. To be this historically bad on the road, and then all of a sudden, oh, look at us, we can beat the number 2 seed multiple times, and don't forget, the number 2 seed has the best home court advantage in the entire NBA this year in terms of wins and losses. So I would struggle with that, but I see your point.
Yeah, and if I could counter with that, in a different way, Golden State limped into the playoffs last season. Remember that first round series? Steph Curry didn't even start. He started the series coming off the bench because, he didn't play towards the end of the regular season. Then there was the Klay Thompson, play a game, miss a game. Draymond Green, the back stuff. They limped into the playoffs, but they flipped that switch when the postseason came. That it's that veteran, it's that Joe, you can't discredit.
They had Otto Porter though, and Otto Porter
he's gone now. Well. He's long gone.
They got a lot of young guys that are going to be that they haven't earned their playoff scars. You don't just get to show up.
Anthony Lamb ain't no Otto Porter.
Correct. So I understand you, but like I said, I'd still have them number 2 for me.
Yeah.
For me, it would be the Lakers, which maybe is a surprising choice. And you and Anthony Sane both are going to make fun of me for that. Talking about how old they are. Grandpa LeBron is going to knock, which, by the way, LeBron is my age, I think. Isn't he like 36, 37?
Maybe he's 30, a little bit older. He's 38. Yeah.
So he's a couple years older than me.
Yeah, you're a young guy. LeBron. You're a young guy, Joe. He's an old guy. He's old.
Says the gray in my beard. I think that with the Lakers, what makes me nervous, especially if you don't have Steven Adams, and again, maybe the Grizzlies will. If you don't have Steven Adams, that means that you have to put Jaren Jackson Jr. on Anthony Davis. You have
foul trouble.
Correct. And even with, how much that can be overblown, of the guys in the NBA that can give Jaren legitimate problems, Anthony Davis is one of them. So LeBron James, Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell. I'm not necessarily as concerned about him. Grizzlies fans will remember last postseason.
Right.
He
Yeah.
actually helped the Grizzlies win a playoff game when he was with Minnesota. But they are legitimately deeper. Austin Reeves has become a decent to good NBA rotation player. You obviously have Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt. The Grizzlies fans are familiar with those guys as well. Mike Conley is with the Timberwolves now as part of that trade. I really am interested to see. Maybe it's because it's just the aura of LeBron James, and it would be a really fun series, right? To have LeBron there in FedEx Forum. That would be pretty cool to see in the twilight of his career. Maybe it's just the aura. And again, you might say it too. I know Sane would make fun of me, a mutual friend of ours, Anthony Sane. Maybe I just still see LeBron as that unstoppable force. And if he and AD are at full strength, they're capable of losing to anybody, of course, but they're also capable of beating anybody. And they are a different team now than they were 3 months ago.
You said the key, full strength. They're not going to be at full strength. LeBron's foot sounds like it's not going to be 100% at any point. And watching that game against the Clippers, on Wednesday,
he looked old in that first half.
That was as bad as I've seen LeBron James look. And
much better in the second half.
But you see in the second half as the rust came off, but how much margin of error would you have if that's a playoff series? Clearly, there was a big margin of error in that game because you built a big deficit to try to climb out of. So I just don't trust that. That's all it is with me. The talent, I agree with you. You throw LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and D'Angelo Russell as it's a solid, complementary player. Austin Reeves has been really solid. Vando is just a defensive monster. I mean,
he's fun to watch.
He took Kawhi out of that game in the second half. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're gonna play LeBron 40 minutes in a playoff series on a bad foot. Anthony Davis in and out of the lineup because of foot soreness. D'Angelo Russell in and out of the lineup because of foot soreness. They all have bad feet over there, and that's my only thing is the Grizzlies. Ja's going to be playing 38, 39 minutes, and Dylan Brooks is going to be extremely physical with LeBron, and he's not going to back off if LeBron's saying, "Ouch, my toe." You think Dylan Brooks is going to say, "Hey, my bad, let me back up some"?
He'll stomp on it potentially.
Yeah, he might say, "Oh yeah, let me see," and try to stomp on it. But that's my only thing. I think talent wise, the Lakers have a lot of talent. But the Grizzlies, just their playing style, they're up and down. They're going to really, force things tempo-wise. I feel like it's a bad matchup from that perspective for the Lakers. And not necessarily it's the same case for a team that's as deep as the Clippers who can withstand a loss or two, or a team like Golden State who, hey, you want to play up and down? You're playing right into our hands. So that's my case on the Lakers. I think talent-wise, you're on the money. But I can't trust it. Those bad feet, man. It feels like LeBron will come out and have a 15-point game out of nowhere, and people say, "What happened to LeBron?" But in the end, it'll just be he's battling the foot stuff.
Got to get some insoles or something like that. Help as you get older. I don't have insoles yet, but I understand the allure of the New Balances more than ever before. Maybe LeBron needs to talk to Kawhi and get some New Balance kicks. But now that we've shared, we both want to see the Pelicans. Damichael wants to avoid the Warriors. I wouldn't mind seeing the Warriors. I am a little nervous about the Lakers. Damichael disagrees, which is okay. How do you feel? What are you thinking? Leave a comment for us. Let us know, and we can talk about it over the weekend, heading in to our Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, when all of these questions will be answered. We're very excited about that. The playoffs will be here. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game-to-Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game-to-Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Again, Monday's episode, the play-in tournament will be set. We will have teams to break down. We'll have a weekend of basketball to look back on. Surely we'll have some injury updates, whether it's Santi Aldama, Steven Adams, all that sort of stuff, heading into a few days where the Grizzlies can prioritize rest, recovery, practice, as you alluded to, getting prepared for an upcoming playoff series against whoever it's going to be it's going to be go time come Monday, partner.
It's gonna be go time. I can't wait. I cannot wait, man. I'm getting pumped over here. Joe. It's like before the football game, and you're hitting everybody on the helmet, and you're saying, "Let's go!" Like that's how I feel. And at the end of the day, it's gonna be fun, no matter who it is, right? That's what makes the Western Conference race so fun. There's a great narrative attached to all the teams that we just mentioned, and how it relates to the Grizzlies. So I'm excited, Joe. I know you're excited, and I'm excited. Tell you what. As much as one reason I don't want to go to Golden State is because it's the longest flight. I didn't want to talk about that during the show, but it's the longest flight, and it's going to be a layover more than likely. So that's the gruesome part of going to Golden State too. So with all that being said, I'm super excited for it, Joe. I know you are too, and we're gonna have a blast here on Locked On Grizzlies covering it.
If we're talking about my mental health and my sleep patterns, I support you completely on that. No California series. I would like to see either the Timberwolves or the Pelicans for that exact reason. And for you, particularly, I would cheer for the Pelicans because you get to go to New Orleans and eat some good food and enjoy yourself down there. So let's hope for the Pelicans for selfish reasons for both of us heading into the play-in tournament. So we'll see how it all plays out. Starting on Monday, make sure you're here with us. Thank you so much for being with us here on this Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network. Check us out on YouTube, rate, review, like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. Continue to follow Damichael. If you don't already do so, make sure you're doing so at Damichael C. Follow me on Twitter at Joe Mullinax. I write for Bluff City Media. He writes for Commercial Appeal. Wonderful work from all of my co-workers over at and colleagues over at Bluff City Media. Make us a part of your NBA playoff experience. You'll be smarter about the Memphis Grizzlies for doing so, I can assure you. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. Go Grizzlies in terms of closing out the season, first and foremost, on a healthy note. But beyond that, hopefully the 2 seed, and we're talking play-in matchups on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay locked in. This has been Locked On Grizzlies.